Hi, I'm Chris Clark, Artistic Director of Cinema St. Louis, presenter of QFest St. Louis. We have some special guests with us today in this Zoom QFest interview session. New Missouri resident, director Dan Steadman, made a documentary short about his partner, Rodney Wilson. If you don't remember that name or know that name, if you lived in Missouri or St. Louis in the early 90s, Rodney was a high school teacher at Melville High School, and in casual conversation, in an open and honest dialogue with his students, he sort of slipped a little bit and kind of outed himself. And this became a citywide, national, international news incident, and didn't really change the world, but in a small way it did. And as an empowering story. So Rodney, just so good to meet you. I was out of town during the late 80s, and I was back in town then. And I do remember when this happened. And, for people that don't know much about Melville, it's sort of a sleepy little suburb in near South County. And, who would have thought that this international incident would have been sparked by just an offhand remark in a classroom in a high school? Tell us a little bit more about that day and that setting. And I don't even know what questions to ask. There were just, so much that happened from that day.
Well, it had been a long time coming. The idea of being open and honest with myself took several years, and then beginning to be open and honest with family and friends took a couple years. And then it seemed to me the natural evolution would be that, I live my life at work as well, openly and honestly. So it was my fourth year teaching. In Missouri, you're granted tenure after your fifth year. So I knew it was risky at my fourth year, but it seemed the right time. Everything seemed to come together. And it seemed like that was the right time to just go ahead and make it known to a class of students, knowing that, of course, the moment that happened, everybody in the school of 1,800 to 2,000 students, it was a 9th through 12th grade school, 9th through 12th grade, that they would know. And like you said, it became an issue rather quickly, and that remainder of the year and the following year, my fifth year, was navigating through that process and waiting for the spring of the following year, a year plus later, to determine if I'd be granted tenure or if they would let me go.
And, because we know the answer, we can skip ahead to the punchline, is that the outpouring of support from the students and fellow faculty members and community members, and there were certainly those opposed, and that's why it was an issue, but you stayed. You're still teaching, right?
Yes, I stayed there for 7 years total. So I came out the fourth year, granted tenure the fifth. I did 2 additional years, so I was there 7 years. Overwhelmingly, there was high support from students and from fellow faculty. I think the administration was in a bind. They didn't quite know what to do. They allowed their attorney to speak for them often. And I had an attorney provided from the Missouri National Education Association. And so it was sort of a battle of attorneys for a while. And then the public part of it, where various media outlets were interested, I think that also was very helpful in terms of putting a light on that school and that situation, so that if they had acted nefariously and had let me go, they would have known that it would have been an event and people would have known what they had done. So I think that was part of the process too of keeping my position.
Yeah, just a remarkable story, and one that I may not have expected to have necessarily to have that resolution in St. Louis and South County. That could have easily gone a different way, and we've heard so many of those stories and tales over time. So it's hometown hero-ish kind of thing, and it did spark a lot of conversation. You were on a lot of news shows and interviews and radio shows, and just, everybody wanted to talk about it for a while, and it, didn't make, world impact and change the whole planet. Things are still weird now, but it was a very important local step. And, I do salute you, sir. That was really
Thank
a
you.
brave moment, that, you weren't in tenure, and all you wanted to do was just do your job. And the job that you chose was to teach these children. That's all you wanted to do. That was
Exactly.
the gay agenda, was to teach. And then the other interesting part of this story is, this documentary was made by your partner, Dan, who is an implant. He wasn't here during that time. And he moved to the area to make a feature film a couple of years ago. And then sort of like said, from Los Angeles, and decided sort of liked the area. And then how did you two meet? I have to, go a sideways direction. That's just a fascinating part of the story. I know you're making a film about your own partner, which has a great story, but you were new here. And then how did you guys find each other?
We were on Facebook, and good old Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg introduced us.
Okay.
No, we were we are both big fans of same music artist, Amy Grant, and there's a gay page fans, and that's where we kind of knew each other. When I was looking for extras for the film I made here in 2013, called Belleville, I think I reached out to Rodney. I was just looking local, like, do I have any Facebook friends in this area? I wasn't even entirely sure the proximity of St. Louis to Belleville, Illinois. Like, I was only in that world on that side of the river. And so we—
That's okay too. It's okay too. Belleville's all right.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. And so anyway, that's how we had been friends for a few years. But at some point, I guess he sort of noticed that I hadn't left, even though it still said I lived in Los Angeles, because technically I did. All my stuff was out there. And he wrote to me and just checked in with me. I stuck around to make another movie, which is why I was still here. I was making a Christmas film in the summer. And so anyway, that's how we met.
Did you know his backstory? Did you know about all this at the time? Yeah. When did that come up in casual conversation? Oh, by the way.
Like going through boxes. It's so funny, Chris. Rodney does not talk about these things. We were going through boxes for the History Museum, and I just started to be like, now wait, what are all these, front page headlines and newspaper stories? And then I ran across a VHS tape of, Dateline NBC and the Ricky Lake Show, and I'm like, what's going on here? Basically, and then, that's how I found out. And then later, it wasn't even at that time that I really understood the creation of LGBT History Month, which he had done for every October, which is, obviously celebrated worldwide. That was something that kind of came along later too. And I was like, are you telling me that this was your— so anyway, he just doesn't talk about these things. So I have to find stories. A writer's always looking within to find stories. This time I looked in the basement.
Very good. Very good. A lot of gay history starts somewhere in a dark basement.
Right.
I know parts of mine did. Well, Rodney, that's a great testament to your character to not, broadcast that and wear it. It's something that you would have done no matter what. You didn't go into the situation planning to be a warrior or anything. It happened, and you did it. But that wasn't why you did it. You did it because you want to be honest with yourself, and and that doesn't define who you are, those actions. But it sure speaks volumes that it doesn't matter. And then I can just see the look in your face, Dan. That must have been such a surprise. And you already liked the guy, like you needed. Like
we were already living together. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you didn't necessarily need those extra reasons, but well done. You did a good job in the selection process, clearly. So that's just, it's just a remarkable part of the story.
Hopefully you notice character first, and you notice all kinds of things that, if you're building something on some accolades, it wasn't really a genuine foundation to begin with necessarily. It was kind of fun to have it be like 2 years in that I was like, oh, may I call you Rosa Parks? Which he doesn't let me call her.
I think too, it had been so long ago that it had receded into the past.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
had not looked at any of, I had taped on VHS the Dateline and all these others, but I hadn't looked at them in 20 plus years. I hadn't been back to the high school in 20 plus years. So to me, it was something from so long ago. And then Dan is looking at it, and to him, it's something more fresh. And so, like with this project here, he kept pushing. I tell him, of course, we're all sort of interested in ourselves, but I'm not that interested in myself. And I would tell him, I'm just not interested enough to do this. And he kept pushing it. And then finally we looked at the videotapes, and he grabbed, what he wanted from those.
He wouldn't let me, he wouldn't even sit in those interviews, that we did at Melville High School.
Mm-hmm.
We went back.
No.
Was like wandering the hallways because he wanted nothing to do with it.
Right. I didn't think it would be right for me to be there as they spoke. I didn't see the raw footage. I didn't see any edits. I made no decisions. So as objective as he could be, that's what I wanted from this project.
Did it feel weird?
Yes, it did feel strange. I'm very proud of it, though. I will say now, because as a person who studied history all my life, I know that if a record is not made, that event eventually fades or it didn't happen. And we're a visual species. And to have it now in this 26-minute block that tells the story from beginning to end, I'm very proud to have that. And when I see it, I do feel like, I did accomplish something now 25 years ago. And as we get older, I think we look back more on our past to see if we achieved something when we were, walking through this life. And when I see that, I recognize that I did. So I'm very proud of it, and I'm very grateful to the work. I mean, Dan did the whole thing. I had a little suggestion here or input here or there or a contact, but he did it. So I'm very thankful for it.
So along with, in your tour down memory lane and walking around the halls and even just doing the project at all, it had to have brought back some level of PTSD or some traumatic memories. You had to have been under insane pressure during various points of the time. Was any of it difficult for you? Reliving some of these potentially painful experiences and memories and stuff like that.
I don't know if difficult's the right word, but it is true that in going through this process over the last couple of years, I recognize the emotion that I was feeling again. So I recognize the anxiety even from anxiety I had in 1994 and 95 and 96. So yes, it did bring back that, because I hadn't explored this information in all those years. I hadn't seen the tapes or read the articles. Well, I still haven't read the articles, but yeah, I did feel that. It did return. And being at the school for the first time in 20 years also brought back a lot of emotions and a lot of memories. Walking into my former classroom, for example, where that happened and where so many wonderful students came through my classroom, and I enjoyed every minute I was there and working with them. So all of those images of all of those students came back, and it was a very fulfilling and emotional day to be back on the campus, wandering around while Dan was doing the interviewing.
And then when we went back to show them this documentary that the gay and lesbian
the Gay Straight
group,
Alliance,
the Gay Straight Alliance, it was moving for you to see the difference in where kids are at now 30 years later, than it was when you were there. I mean, what a contrast.
Exactly. I mean, we took the film there this past October, and many teachers came to watch it. The principal came to watch it. One of the assistant principals was there to watch it. It was hosted by the Gay Straight Alliance. There were 10 or 15 students there to watch it. And that was incredible to know that this was happening in the same space that those events happened, and they were so controversial in 94 and 95, and now in 2019, they weren't controversial at all. And when it was over, a link was sent out to every employee there at Melville High School, a link to a private link to the film so that those who couldn't come to see it there at the school could look at it. That sort of openness, of course, was not there in 94 and 95.
That's remarkable. That's wonderful. So in Doctor Who world, they would call that a fixed point in time, that was always going to happen. You two were always going to meet. And Dan, thank you for telling this story. I remembered vaguely that it had happened, but like I said, it was, a while back, and many things have happened since then. My high school experience here, I was not out in high school, but I went to an all-male conservative Catholic high school. And if something like that had happened when I graduated in the late 70s, or even when it happened to you at Melville, I don't know what would have happened there. That would have been, a arguably different scenario. And I'd like to think that they're progressive, but sometimes people aren't. So
It really inspired the culture too. The culture was sort of at a bit of a tipping point where it was starting to evolve. And, you got a call one day from your mother, who was watching your storyline play out on All My Children, because she's a big soap fan. And I'm sure you didn't believe it at first, but you turn it on and there was an actor playing a high school a history teacher with the exact same billboard that you had, and showing the Hitler and the Holocaust and the different symbols. And so he's now Facebook friends with the actor who played him, but it was interesting to watch the impact it had on the culture as well, and that Hollywood was at the point where they could actually depict that kind of storyline in daytime television, which was pretty rare at that time.
You inspired so many people, Rodney. Thank you for your story.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing Dan to do it, even though you fought against it. I'm glad you were tenacious in getting what you want. Rodney, I don't know if you know this or not, but Dan was perhaps the last human I saw before quarantine started. We had a breakfast, and then that was it. Everyone had to go home, and it's been wild. I actually went to a restaurant yesterday for the first time, and it was weird but interesting. I really enjoyed this part of the process. I was pretty miserable in the beginning. I didn't know if I wanted to continue. I didn't know what a virtual festival was going to be like. And this is our first effort. And a lot of people are coming to the table. The program that your short is in is the tote board leader so far, as the people have claimed free tickets. And you both know that I have some generous underwriting from a high school chum who much later, after we came out, or we were done with high school, I was long since out of the closet. Everybody knew about me, but 10 years after that, he slowly came out of the closet too. So now he helps underwrite our free queer programming for the festival.
Thank him for us.
I actually looked him up on Facebook and have sent him a thank you note, and
that's
had
sweet.
a few Facebook messages back and forth.
I will. We've been, thick as thieves for a long time with, some arguments and stuff along the way, but he's a good friend and a generous friend. And also, so the people that view the program will have access to this interview, this little chat that we have that's been so nice. But we're also going to put it on our YouTube channel as well for the world to see. We don't know if they'll kill or not, but just for posterity and historical perspective. So again, this has been really sweet and great. The show goes on for 9 days, and people can watch anytime they want. And I hope we use every single ticket and hope share this message a little bit further. So thanks again, guys. This has been a great part of my afternoon, and see you at QFest.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.